From the studios of the Optimism Institute, welcome to the Blue Sky Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Burke, and in every Blue Sky episode, we'll be speaking to leaders, researchers, and thinkers whose stories and insights will remind us that there is always blue sky above. Sometimes you just have to get your head above the clouds to see it. Today's Blue Sky guest is someone who graduated from West Point, served in the U.S. Army, returned to civilian life, then was called back to service overseas, where he sustained a life-threatening injury, rallied through this and other personal setbacks, and today oversees a nonprofit supporting veterans and their families. Oh, and by the way, he did much of this while building a for-profit business that today generates top-line revenue of more than $1 billion. If you're not already inspired, you will be by the end of this conversation with Tom Deierlein. Tom Deierlein is the CEO of Thundercat Technologies, a company that delivers technology products and services to government organizations, educational institutions, and commercial companies. As you'll soon hear more about, Tom's a former U.S. Army major and combat-wounded Operation Iraqi Freedom vet. He's a Bronze Star and Purple Heart recipient and the founder of the TD Foundation, which provides aid to the families of wounded warriors and fallen heroes. I've been an admirer of Tom since we first met many years ago and was very pleased when he agreed to come on this show. I hope you enjoy this Blue Sky conversation with Tom Deierlein as much as I did. Tom Deierlein, welcome to the Blue Sky Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It really is an honor.
Oh, it's a pleasure to get back together with you. We've known each other for some time. I'd like to learn more about your upbringing. You are a West Point graduate, I believe the 8th of 9 kids.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, was there a military influence growing up, or how did you wind up going to the military academy?
Yeah, I think it's so. Yes, I'm 8 out of 9. I grew up in White Plains, New York. My dad was a China Marine at the end of World War II. So
Okay.
he was a China Marine like 46 to 49.
Okay.
But he was out. And then my sister was Navy ROTC at a Fairfield University.
Oh, interesting.
But that was because she, they wanted to have college paid for,
Save
right?
money, yeah.
But actually, it was my sister that she took me up to a West Point football game when I was 13, and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And they had the honor code, and I always think I was an ethical little kid. I went to Catholic schools, but
Yeah.
and I thought going in the Army was the prize, not the payback. I was like, and you get to go in the Army for 5 years.
Right.
So, and my parents, look, my mother's still with us. My dad's passed almost 10 years now. But when I told them I was going to apply, they were like, where else are you going to apply?
Yeah.
And but it was a very classic upbringing. My dad got on the train, went into the city, came back. There was macaroni and cheese on the plate. Your mother was your homework helper, your biggest cheerleader and taxi driver. And it's not until you get out into the real world that you don't realize how good you had it.
Yeah.
Right. Like
Exactly.
I've met plenty of people that had really banged up upbringings or no relationship whatsoever with their parents as adults.
Sure.
So I had a blessed, idyllic upbringing, and certainly I learned some of my early optimism and grit from both of my parents.
Love that. So if I have the dates right, you graduated from West Point in 1989, and was it 5 years service then?
Yeah, a little short, right? Like you go to
Yeah.
basic training and then the additional training, and then you go off to your unit for 3 years. At that point, you're going to go to another advanced course so you can become a company commander. So think of it in the infantry, you go to about, let's call it a 4 to 6 month training.
Yeah.
Then I went through airborne and ranger school. Then you get to your unit and you manage 30 people. You lead a team of 30 called a platoon.
Yeah.
And you have different other jobs. Then you go back for another 6-8 months of training. And that's when you can get a company command and lead 120, 150 people.
Amazing.
And you advance that way. The military is pretty good at professional development,
Yeah.
leadership training, and making sure that they're preparing you either through experiences or stop what you're doing and all you're going to do is train for your next level of responsibility.
Okay.
So they're pretty good like that.
So you
Yeah.
left active duty at the end of that time. Did you think about staying on, or because you eventually go into advertising?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of funny because I guess in the podcast we'll cover my full story because I did
Yes,
end
we're
up back
getting
in.
there.
So
Yeah.
I was 13, said I'm going to go to West Point, do 5 years in the Army, and get out.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm 26 years old, living the plan of a 13-year-old
Yeah.
boy.
Yeah. Right. Right.
But it was time for me to get out, and I
Okay.
never intended on staying. And I remember going to see my boss, Major Mike Bisak, great guy, still friends with him on Facebook. And I said, hey, Major, uh, I'm I'm resigning my commission. He ripped it up.
Ah,
He says, "Hey, Tom or Lieutenant, I don't have time for your jokes today." I go, "Well, two things, sir. One, I'm not joking. Two, you've taught me too well. There's two other copies of that on my desk, And he called and canceled his next meeting. He was like, "You love this,"
yeah.
and I did. I really loved it. And I had a similar conversation with Joe Rodriguez, the battalion commander. He's like, "What are you talking? Like you loved it," and I did. From 17 to 26, I spent basically at that point my entire adult life, but I thought I could go in the reserves or the National Guard. Like you can't be full-time Army, part-time civilian, but you can be full-time civilian, part-time military. And that was originally my plan till I got to Dix. And I got to
Okay.
Fort Dix. They're like, yeah, you'll be a lieutenant. And then in a couple, I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm going to be a captain here in like 20 days. They're like, well, no, you're getting out today. I was like, well, no, I'm already getting promoted.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry. A couple years, you'll be a captain. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. So I went in something called the Individual Ready Reserve, IRR. So I
Okay.
didn't drill, go to weekend warrior thing. I never did that. 12 years later, I was called back in out of the Individual Ready
Okay.
Reserve.
That
Yes, I
explains it, because I
wasn't
was trying to
National
figure out.
Guard.
Right. So that, because it's 12 years later, right? That you get called to serve in active duty again in Baghdad.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I got out, never looked back. But I knew I was in the IRR, Individual Ready Reserve. Like they
Yeah.
would send a notice, hey, fill out this form.
Right.
Then in the late 90s, do you have an email address? And then in the early aughts,
Right.
what's your mobile? And then I got back from the Magazine Publishers Association conference. So I'm at the El Conquistador in Puerto Rico talking to all the major publishers, advertisers, media folks that you and I know from our world. And there was a notice. It was actually a Western Union telegram.
Really?
And it was one of the last uses of it. It said,
Yeah.
hey, it was like right out of Vietnam. You got 30 days to report or a warrant will be put out for your arrest. I have to dig that out. I still have it. But it basically said you're being activated for a year and a half. And if you don't show up at
Wow.
Fort Jackson 30 days from today, you're done.
Wow. Okay. So that, because I'm sure I would assume after 9/11, you're starting to think, well, something like this could happen. But it's a few more years, and you're a civil affairs officer.
Yeah. So
What
when
is
I went
that?
back in, so I was originally infantry, airborne, ranger. Think about it, assault force, right? Or Take This Hill, straight out of the movies. Then when I got called back in, really the kinetic part of the battle had already taken place, and now
Yeah.
what we were doing is the reconstruction, rebuilding, and they needed civil affairs. Think of it as civil affairs is still special operations, but it's civilians or non-combatants, and that's who you're taking care of. It's called
Yeah.
shaping operations in the military, but I was doing economic development, reconstruction, humanitarian aid, governance. Like I was an executive coach for the mayor of Solder City, right?
Really? Really?
Dude, that's a whole podcast of itself because
Yeah.
we're Robert's Rules of Order. We are,
Wow.
lay out the facts and come to a decision. They're very consensus based, and they're more focused on really discussing and really thinking it through and having complete consensus, where we're sort of like, hey, let's get to a decision and get to the next meeting. What are next steps? Put that in the parking lot. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't happen there. It's much more communal effort.
So you're not sent there so much to be in combat, although I've seen the pictures. You're armed and geared up and ready for anything.
Yeah, I mean, it is combat, right? So, but you're not, again, not kicking down doors and chasing bad guys.
Right.
It was, but when you leave the wire, it was odd in that over here there's a gunfight going on. Over here there's a market selling milk.
Crazy.
And we're trying to rebuild the electrical network, rebuild the sewage networks, because with debathification, all the bureaucrats were gone. And I mean
Yeah.
a bureaucrat in a positive
Right.
denotation or
Yeah.
connotation of that.
Yeah.
In order to get a government job, you had to be a Baathist. Well, we came in and said, if you're a Baathist, get out. But there was no one to run,
Yeah.
sewage, water, trash collection. I ended up
Yeah.
getting shot over garbage collection. 2 hours of electricity, no real running water. So all the people that ran essential services were gone.
Gone.
And that's what we were really focused on. I was doing a lot of humanitarian aid and about $290 million of reconstruction projects.
If you've ever set foot on the beautiful and inspiring campus of the United States Military Academy, you'll understand how Tom Deierlein's attending a football game there when he was 13 planted the seed of his interest in attending. He describes being raised by parents who instilled in him a grit and sense of optimism that served him well as a cadet and Army officer. After leaving active duty, he was also thriving in his civilian career, only to be called back and sent to Baghdad 12 years later. And what an amazing experience that was. Imagine being the executive coach for the mayor of Sadr City. Getting back to our conversation, Tom will speak some more about the impactful work he did in Iraq, helping innocent local children and their families who'd been caught up in years of warfare. In that process, you saw some of the worst poverty, worst conditions you've ever seen, and something in you took an interest in the kids and giving them supplies or soccer balls. And then, as I understand it, your friends back home in the U.S. were contributing and sending stuff over. And what was it about you? Because you're in a potentially hostile environment. What was it about you to reach out to these young kids? It's not part of your job description, I don't think.
I think it's just, well, humanitarian aid was part of the mission, but just the suffering. Like, so for your listeners, just imagine it's 125 degrees out,
Ugh.
and everyone's like, "Oh, it's the humidity, not the heat." Turn your oven on. Turn your oven on to 125.
That's
Stick
hot.
your head in.
That's
See
hot.
how that goes for you. But and you've got a mother deciding which of her 3 kids gets water today.
Yeah, right.
Struggling to feed their families. Like parents all over the world are the same thing. And you just want a decent life for your kids, a better life for their kids, but certainly shelter, food, and safety, right? Let's go back down to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And they really were struggling at that level.
Yeah.
There was a lot of sectarian violence. Like if you were a Sunni living in a Shia neighborhood, you get a notice on your door: leave by next Tuesday or we'll kill you and your whole family.
God.
If you were the opposite, if you were a Sunni living in a Shia, so they were kicking each other out, and it was beyond sectarian. There was a very mafiosa feel to it too. If you ever saw the gangs in New York and those early, it's not, they were just running, these different neighborhoods, but the people that were suffering was your average citizen. Think school teacher, firefighter, construction worker, market farmer. Like they were the ones caught in the middle. You got the US, you've got the Shia, the Sunni, the Iraqi army, the Iraqi police, all trying to stabilize this place. But fundamentally, you just couldn't protect some of these people. And it was just heartbreaking to see these innocent children starving, suffering. Like one of the first things I requested from back east or back in the US is children's vitamins.
Huh.
children's vitamins because they were just so malnutritioned.
Sure.
So then I went and got sticky labels and printed in Arabic.
Wow.
These are children's vitamins. They taste
Wow.
like candy. Lock them up or hide them from the kids that they should really only eat one
Yeah,
every
right.
other day
Right.
in
Wow.
Arabic. And we wrapped it around. And it was interesting because one of the first times we go to give out food and water and we showed up with cases of food, the boys, the little kids come out and then they run and disappear. And then some of the men start coming out and collecting some of the food and water. And then you give out the first bottle of vitamins and you wait.
Yeah.
2 minutes later, women, full burqa, head down, not making eye contact with you. You don't make eye contact with them. And they would walk up because they knew they needed those vitamins for their kids.
Wow.
Mothers are mothers all around the world. And that's
Powerful.
what got me, you know.
Sure.
And then so you try to go to the army and you're like, how do I get humanitarian? Fill out this form. And
Yeah.
so I just started calling home and being like, and emailing people from the media industry and the advertising world and said, ship me clothes, children's vitamins. Doug Weaver sent a ton of school supplies. Kate Thorpe sent her kids leftover shoes. And it was a really industry effort from the digital media world that just started shipping boxes and boxes.
Incredible.
And then we would attach it to our missions because it is dangerous to leave the wire, but we would go do a mission at position A, and then like quarter mile away, we'd set up a humanitarian aid distribution. And I didn't have to worry about the army giving me material. I gave out stuff that was provided by the industry.
Amazing. Yeah. So you mentioned it was dangerous. Tell us about your injury and what happened to you.
Yeah. So again, I just had this mentality that like if I was going to be there, I was going to try and really make a difference. If I was going to give a year and a half of my life, I was going to try and make it a better place. And that was good because that was part of my role as a civil affairs. Well, in the late summer of 2006, there was an operation called Operation Together Forward 2 to resecure Baghdad.
Okay.
And it was for your listeners, like that, if I'm not sharing anything that's not public, right? It was the failure of that operation that led to Petraeus and the call for the surge in 2006. So just to set the time frame.
Yeah.
So we did an operation called Clear, Hold, Build. We would go in, picture Manhattan, right? Like, let's go surround the East Village and we will surround the East Village, or let's go, Hell's Kitchen. We're going to go surround Hell's Kitchen, nobody in, nobody out, 24/7 curfew. And we're going to sweep it for bad guys and bad things.
Yep.
That was the clear. Then we're going to hold it and turn it over to the police or the Iraqi army and build. Civil affairs was the build piece, reconstruction, humanitarian aid, rebuilding networks, restocking hospitals, which were woefully undersupplied.
Yeah.
But that was our mission. And mine was clearing up garbage. Well, on September 6th, I went out. Somebody had been shooting at some of our contractors. So we went out, we put up a 360 security, we secured the area. We couldn't find out where the bad guys were. So I called in security, and we were getting ready to leave the area. And then boom, I got shot by a sniper.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. In the pelvis. Is that right?
Yeah.
So your inches, centimeters, as bad as it was, your inches or centimeters from something catastrophic, I would think, between your spinal cord or right. I mean, this was a serious, terrible thing.
No, I'm Catholic. I got last rites.
Yeah.
I mean, it was bad. Yeah, I'm an L5S1 spinal cord injury. So the bullet, which is a 7.62 tumbling round, makes a pinhole going out, about a fist size going out, pin size in, fist size going out. So it came in just under my body armor, over the iliac crest of my pelvis, hit the back of my pelvis, shattered, tumbled through, shattered my sacrum, which is that triangle at the base of your spine, and then my right pelvis. So, no, I was very fortunate. Very fortunate. You want to talk about your optimists? Like, I was very fortunate to have Jeff Rogers as our Eagle first responder on our team and out there with us. So he did immediate first aid. Drew Corbin, cool as a cucumber, called in the 9 line, which is the 9 bits of information you need to call in an evacuation helicopter.
Yep.
They drove me about a mile away to an LZ, got me on a bird, and I got on the operating room inside what's called the golden hour.
Yeah, right.
Right. Every minute
Yeah.
counts in that situation.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
How quickly do you go back to the US in a situation like that?
So within 20, so I really only had that first operation at
Yeah.
Baghdad.
Then they want to get you home.
And then and about 24 hours later, I was in Balad, went into shock there,
Ugh,
spent 24 hours in Balad, and then I was flown to Landstuhl in Germany. But I wasn't stable enough to fly,
right.
so they kept me there for a week. Actually, I went into shock and almost died on the way to Landstuhl. But then after a week, they were like, "Okay, now you're stable enough. We
Yeah.
know what your injuries are, what's going on." And I took a bird to Andrews, and then I spent the next 4 months at Walter Reed doing recovery, and then I went to the Polytrauma Spinal Cord Center at the James A. Haley VA in Tampa to do my rehab.
This was learning how to walk. This wasn't, bend your knee a few times. This was serious rehab.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And plus, again, my pelvis was shattered, so I couldn't stand up even if my feet legs did work. Like
Right.
there's your pelvis is the weight bearing mechanism that transfer your leg into your spine. So I had to wait until, so I got shot in September, October, November. Really 3 months before I could even stand up. I stood up for the first time December 22nd of 2006. So
Wow.
a little more than 3 months later.
It's amazing to hear how, despite the dangers presented by being, as Tom describes, outside the wire, he decides if he's going to be there, he's going to make a difference. He starts to help out kids and their families with basic needs like vitamins and reaches out to friends and colleagues back home who answered his call to send supplies directly to Tom, circumventing what would have been a sea of military red tape. Then, on September 6, 2006, he's shot by a sniper. His injuries are severe enough that he's given last rites and nearly dies from shock during one of his helicopter transfers. He describes himself as being fortunate in this situation since he was surrounded by fellow soldiers who were expert first responders and somehow got him into an operating room within the first hour. It would be more than 3 months before Tom would even stand again, but remarkably, while recovering and lying in hospital beds, his TD Foundation continued to operate and grow. We'll next learn some more about how Tom Deierlein continues to make a positive impact on his fellow veterans and their families.
So, as this all is happening, now I believe at this point, is it already called the TD Foundation after Tom Deierlein, that this is ongoing, the support to the folks back in Iraq? And then how do you think about Iraq having been shot by a sniper there? And walk us through how this evolves from there, this foundation that is named for you.
So, yeah, I always say I didn't name it. I'm
Yeah,
not a narcissist, but I didn't
right.
change the name either,
Yeah,
you know?
TD, that's
So,
cool. Sounds good.
Sean Finnegan, who has now passed, Paul Bremer, Bill Flatley, when I started making all these requests through the old timers list from the digital media mafia and the iMedia crew, we had scheduled a fundraiser for October when I was going to be on mid-tour break.
Oh,
So
wow.
there was already 2 to 3 boxes arriving. Let's not say a day. Let's say 6 to 8 a week were arriving from all over the U.S. to my APO and getting to my unit. And then we were going to do a fundraiser at the Forbes Gallery because Bill Flatley was the head of, chief revenue officer of Flat. So he's like, I'll get you this. So there's a bunch of people already scheduled to show up. Well, then I get shot, but the fundraiser still takes place.
Wow.
And I'm laying in at Walter Reed and I'm getting checks made out to Tom Deierlein Foundation. I'm like, okay, so I called USAA, opened an account called the and submitted all these checks. And in the first 5 years that we were working, we were continuing the mission that I had done when I was boots on ground, which is helping these innocent children in Iraq and Afghanistan. We did 50 life-saving surgeries, bringing them out west to either Jordan or we had a kid who had his leg shattered by an RPG, and we arranged to get him flown to the University of Michigan. very much the starfish, story,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
the guy running on the beach throwing the star, and the guy's like, "What are you doing? You can't save them all. You're not going to make it." He's like, "It makes a difference to this one.
Yeah.
Makes a difference to this one." So
Yep.
we were just doing the best we could to support kids. A lot of surgeries. Again, over $50,000 of children's vitamins, over almost $100,000 of school supplies, and
Amazing.
but then as we've scaled back our involvement both in Iraq and Afghanistan, we were shipping it to soldiers and they were
Right.
distributing it. So by 2013, we bought that mission home. And now the mission of the TD Foundation is to help the children of wounded warriors and fallen heroes. And we help American families that are in crisis.
Amazing. So we'll talk some more about that. But speaking of wounded warriors, as you're lying in Walter Reed, did you have moments of sort of why me? How am I going to pull this back together? Or were you of a mindset of that sort of grit and resilience? And you're literally getting checks to TD Foundation in the hospital bed. Are those the
And
things that kept
coordinating
you?
effort. Yeah.
Are those the things that kept you going? Can you walk us through what that's like?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes, all of the above, right?
Yeah.
Like you can have dark days. I had dark days. Like
Yeah.
how will how will I continue? How will I function? My first wife left me when I was in a wheelchair at Walter Reed. Like
Ugh.
there were bad days, dude.
That's a bad day.
days.
That's a bad
Again,
day.
another podcast, another time. But like you and I had spoken about the Stockwell paradox, right?
Yes,
Stockwell
yes.
is a very famous POW from Vietnam, and Jim Collins,
Yep.
the business author, interviewed him. He's like, you have to have this unwavering faith that eventually you will prevail, but you have to acknowledge the brutal realities of the challenges and obstacles you're facing. And
Yes.
so I was having my own Stockdale paradox moments. There were days where I
Sure.
was like, down, 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 dark
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
But the majority of the time, I was just glad to be alive,
Yeah.
right? Like just glad to be here. The joke among, whether it's cancer survivors or wounded warriors, it's like every holiday, every day's a holiday, every meal's a feast, right?
Yeah. Right.
And eventually, my positive attitude and my approach led to parents and spouses asking me to go talk to other people in their room. Because so word got around that I was super banged up,
Yeah.
in a wheelchair like their son or daughter. And the thing with, negative thoughts, I call it a cancer, but it's
Yeah.
like it's like a toilet bowl. If you can catch the water at the front, but you catch it down here and it's really low and it's
Yeah.
moving really, really fast. You got to catch
Right.
people at the
Yeah.
beginning of that negativity spiral.
Right.
So I did play that role, not just for myself, but for others that were there. But to suggest that I was like excited and happy, I remember
Yeah.
Fox News came in and interviewed me. They were interviewing different. So we were interviewing, and he's asking me questions, and then they turn off the camera, and he turns off, and he folds his notebook. He goes, "Come on, man! Like you can't possibly be this positive."
Really?
I was like, what other way can you do it? What other way can you do it? Like the people that are listening to this now, they're probably predisposed to be optimistic. I'd love it
Yeah.
if we could just recruit some pessimists to
Yep.
tune in and listen, because that's who needs this message.
Yeah.
But for me, I just started to focus on the longer term vision, my longer term goals. I remember, well, I did watch a lot of PTI, so I'm a big Pardon the Interruption fan. I did watch a lot of TV.
Yeah. The
But as you're
ESPN in
sitting
the
there,
hospital. Yeah.
as you're sitting there reflecting, you do decide who you want to be,
Yeah.
what you're going to do differently. But I certainly focused on, let me get back to New York City. Let me get back to my life. Let me get back to my job. And those goals created that positive energy and vision for where I wanted to be, even in the dark days. Yeah.
Yeah, that you mentioned Stockdale, and what you're saying now reminds me too of Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning, where it was the people in the concentration camps, in his view, who had that purpose on the other side, that thing they wanted to get back to, that vision on the other side, not necessarily putting a date to it, I'll be home by, New Year's or whatever, but having that thing out there. And it sounds like you had it both. You had the TD Foundation, and now I just learned you're going room to room, cheering people up or giving them encouragement. I assume that had a lot to do with it. Can you bring us up to date? And then I want to talk about your entrepreneurial endeavors, but can you bring us up to date on the TD Foundation? How big it's grown, how long you've been at it, what kind of services you providing today?
Yeah, so it evolved, and I stood up a board, and we got the IRS 501c3 by 2009. So it took a couple years, and but now we raise, I don't know, where somewhere between $200 to $400,000 each year. We help approximately 90 to 110 families. So you could do the math
Amazing.
there. It's like usually $1,000
Yeah.
bucks. $600 not to have their water turned off. So the mission of the TD Foundation is to help the children of wounded warriors and fallen heroes. We help American families in crisis. So how it operates, we operate within this network of other veteran services organizations. They will find the case, they will vet the case, they will validate it, and they'll hand it to us, and we'll just get an email from SOCOM Care Coalition, America's Warrior Partnership, CODA Support, Quality of Life Foundation, even Elizabeth Dole Foundation, which is huge, will feed us cases. If it's a wounded warrior, there's children under 18 in the house, and there's some kind of crisis where they need payment that day, next day. So that's where we specialize. We specialize in crisis, and we specialize in same day, next day payment. So we almost serve like a financial arm for these other nonprofits that may be more holistic, providing financial counseling, marriage counseling, whatever it is. But like we're the person that this person's going to be evicted next Tuesday, or in extreme cases, this woman is going to court tomorrow. If she doesn't show up with $1,800, she's going to get evicted. Some cases that we had this week, like there's a active duty SOCOM soldier. His baby was born prematurely. They're in the NICU, so he's driving up and down. So he's getting, and then his mother-in-law flies in. Well, who's going to pay for that $800 flight? There is no we'll pay for grandma's flight.org, right? Your son needs a cranial helmet.org. TRICARE won't pay for it. So we really do fill the gaps where TRICARE, the military, the government, and we do find a lot of cases where Jill, single mother, wounded warrior, just lost her job. And just like most Americans, they don't have 2 months, like we all say. They have 2 months. They might have 2 weeks, or they might be living paycheck to paycheck. And we help them. We see a lot of folks where the guy is so banged up, the mother, and think about how hard it is to raise kids, right? So here's the mother. She's taking care of this banged up thing, trying to raise 2 kids. And now all of a sudden the car breaks down. Well, holy crap, I don't have $850. So we do a lot of car repairs, a lot of medical bills, a lot of utilities. Interesting, Bill, and we can move on from here, but I was at a conference with America's Warrior Partnership, and they do all these studies. And over the last 10 years, we've done plenty of car repairs. And I didn't quite make them as much of a priority as I did others. I'm like, and you're calling Joe in the middle of Georgia, and you're like, can I give you a credit card to fix Bill's car? And he's like, sure,
Who are you?
Yeah, but if you got a credit card, I'll take it, And but I didn't think about, like, let me get this urgently. Well, you know what the number one cause of hopelessness is? It's not job loss. It's not, fear of not having transportation. Without transportation, you can't get to your job. You can't get to the grocery store. You can't get your kids to school and activities. So I was like, oh my goodness, I'm talking about cancer patients. I'm talking about preventing homelessness. I'm talking about mental health treatment. My goodness. The biggest thing that creates despair and hopelessness in wounded warriors and families is lack of transportation. So now, if we get a car repair request, I drop what I'm doing and make sure we pay for that. Yeah, that's what we do. We fund the
Yeah.
cases that other people have, and it's all 100% volunteer.
Well, 100% volunteer. Yeah, and those contributions you make are incredibly high leverage gifts. I mean, they instantly fix a pressing problem versus other times, you might give money somewhere and you hope it's helping. You're not really sure if it's going to get in the right hands. This is very sort of surgical and strategic and efficient.
Yeah, and it's very because it's direct payment. We'll do Venmo, PayPal, and we'll
Yeah,
either. But
amazing.
look, there's bigger picture issues, and there's people that have big brains that are trying to solve big picture stuff, like America's Warrior Partnership and
Yeah,
others, because they're trying to do all services, all
yeah,
ages, all veterans, all need, like 1-800 vet help kind of thing.
right.
But in our small world, even the biggest of the bigs will call us if they need money same day, next day, and there's children under 18 in the house. That's the role we play.
Incredible.
So we're not solving the bigger picture of sustainability going forward, marriage counseling, mental health counseling, whatever it is, but we certainly help people get out of that crisis to build that bridge from surviving to thriving.
I love the expression, every day's a holiday and every meal's a feast. And it's too bad that for most of us, it would take a life-threatening challenge for us to take on our lives with this level of gratitude. This is not to say that Tom didn't have dark days, including having his first wife leave him while he was still in a wheelchair. But just as Admiral Stockdale and Blue Sky alum Lee Ellis did to help survive captivity in the Hanoi Hilton, Tom Deierlein focused on his future. In his case, on getting back to New York, back to his job, while also being inspired to help others facing similar challenges to his own. And it's inspiring to hear how the TD Foundation jumped on delivering quick turnaround crisis-averting grants for expenses like car repair payments, and how, like that starfish on the beach, Tom's helping families out one at a time. Now, back to the final segment of my Blue Sky conversation with Tom Deierlein.
Well, that's just a sideline thing for you. You are also an incredibly successful entrepreneur. And I'll set this up for you by saying something I've said many times on the show is that not every optimist is an entrepreneur, but every entrepreneur by definition has to be an optimist. And you have built Thundercat technology. Now, Thundercat was, as I understand it, would you call it a code name?
Call sign, yeah, call sign.
Call sign. You were Thundercat.
Yeah.
That's like, like Goose or,
That's Maverick.
So
So
you're Thundercat. And so the company's called Thundercat Technologies. Tell us about the company, when you started, and how big it has grown under your leadership.
So, I'm, just like everything, what is the imposter syndrome, right? Like, I had 4 co-founders, and for the first couple of years, I was still up in New York and still focused on, in fact, during some parts of that, I was working with Dave and Simon Media. So I did have some 4 co-founders, smarter, better men than me. So when we first started it, it was based upon becoming a reseller. So why don't I start with describing who we are, and then I'll take you a little through the history. So Thundercat Technology, we're a VAR, evaluated reseller. People will call them solution provider, system integrator. I'm like, we resell other people's stuff in and around the data center. We resell storage, networking, cyber, even cloud. So, we resell Dell, we resell NetApp, we resell Palo Alto, we resell AWS and Google. In fact, we did the largest largest deal in the history of the Google Cloud platform with the state of New York. And that's what we do. We're a classic VAR, and we sell mostly to the federal government. As we started this podcast, I'm a disabled veteran, and there are special set-aside programs in the federal government for small businesses, for minority-owned, women-owned, or in my case, disabled or service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. And that's the place that where we compete.
Got it.
We've been doing this for a while. We do now. We also sell SLED, state local education, SLED, and we have a thriving commercial practice now. Started in April 1st, 2008. So we're about to celebrate our 17th anniversary, and I always send out
Amazing.
an email. We're no fools, April 1st.
Yeah,
And
that's
it is
amazing.
great. We're about 140 people. To be considered a small business by the SBA, we have to be under 150. So we're sort of at our maximum, and we're over
Okay.
$1 billion in revenue.
Is that
That's a
right?
big number, but keep in mind what I said we do. If I do a million, if not I, if we do $1 million deal at Dell, well, they're keeping 950. You do
Yeah,
you
right,
do a
right,
$2
right.
million
Right.
deal with Palo Alto, they're
Yeah,
keeping
yeah.
1.95, right? Like, so
Right,
it's
right.
not truly a $1 billion enterprise. But
Gotcha.
we do well. Um, and what I say is our purpose, and I do take this seriously. The purpose of Thundercat technology is to make the United States a better and safer place for all Americans.
Wow.
And we talk
Yeah.
about that, and we talk about our values, and doing business with the government, and people are figuring this out with the Doge and the new administration. It's a privilege, not a right, but it's a unique privilege because for
Yeah.
me, I know that I continue to serve my country, making these agencies smarter, better, more enabled to execute their missions. And that's everything from the White House to DHS or the IRS,
Amazing.
Department of Commerce, uh, and the three-letter agencies.
Yeah.
That's our purpose. Yeah, we resell data center technology and cloud, but our purpose is to make the United States a better and safer place for all Americans. I believe that, and we discuss it as a company frequently when we gather monthly.
Amazing. Well, clearly you're a motivational leader. How would you describe the role of, call it optimism, throw in grit, resilience, your own personal experience? What roles do those play in your view in building a company the way you have?
You're always gonna have challenges, right? And to your point, by definition, if you're an entrepreneur, you have some kind of craziness or optimism, or maybe a mix of both, because you're gonna face challenges. And I think when you and I spoke, I said I'm not an optimist. I'm a pragmatic optimist,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't think of hope. I don't think that things will turn out. Just like you were saying with the average person you're talking to, they're a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
That's the growth mindset. That's the growth pragmatic optimism. I believe the planning and action I take will impact the outcome.
Yes.
And so I think that whether it's grit or resilience, or in this case, we'll call it optimism, you have a goal or you have a vision, you got to make sure it's realistic. My
Yep.
company, we are driven annually by SMART goals: specific, measurable, aligned, realistic, and timed. And it's not these high end, like, they have to be specific, they have to be measurable, they have to be aligned, realistic, and timed. And at come January 1st, we look at them and you get a red, yellow, green, and we report it to the company. We don't
Yep.
um, say, oh, well, we had a good year, like we did or didn't.
Yep.
Here's what we said our priorities were. Here were the SMART goals assigned by them. And we've driven the company, certainly the last decade, by SMART goals. Well, goals become super important to people that are optimists and
Yeah.
people that have a growth mindset and
Right.
entrepreneurs, because you have to have that vision, you have to have that belief, you have to have something you're driving towards, so that when you do have those setbacks, when you do have those challenges, you're able to refocus on the ultimate goal.
Yes.
And that's where the grit meets with the optimism, right? Like, grit is this perseverance and persistence, even towards large set goals, right? Like,
Yeah.
over long periods of time. Like, so Dr. Duckworth, who had done the research on, the technical grit,
Yeah.
like, we've all watched a football game. Wow, that was a really gritty performance by,
Yeah. Yeah.
Saquon Barkley. Well, no, you know, grit in the psychological world, in the optimist world, it's longer term is grit, longer
Yes.
term pursuit,
Right.
being faced with challenges. At the end of his career, we can say Saquon Barkley was gritty.
Yeah.
We can
Right.
say Sam Darnold exhibited grit over the last 7 years to get where he's at.
Right.
but they've had challenges and setbacks. So for an entrepreneur and for any of your listeners, I'm not some Pollyanna. Like, I'm just an optimist because I believe that the goals I've set are realistic, are achievable, and I fundamentally believe that if I surround myself with the right people that have that same shared vision, that same shared goal, that together we can do the planning and take the actions to have those things come true and manifest themselves.
I love it. And you said something, a subtle thing in your language. You said, when you have setbacks and obstacles, you didn't say if. And I think that's a big distinction, because I think a lot of people, when they hear, oh, you're an optimist, oh, you're unrealistic, you think you're never going to have it. No, you're going to have tough times. In fact, that's all part of it. And it's knowing that there's something you can work through to get to the other side. And you do a lot of, your organization does a lot of sales. Well, anyone who's worked in sales knows that if you bat 100, forget 1,000, you're doing well. Sales is a lesson in rejection, and it's an optimist who can understand that that's all part of it and keep persevering. Is that a fair way to describe it?
Yeah, and when I talk to people about grit, or when I tell people about a mentality, it's like a baseball player, like you're saying. Like, you're batting 300, you're Hall of Fame material. Like,
Exactly.
you're only getting a hit less than 1 out of 3 times you get to bat. And these days, you're starting if you can bat 250, right? So, and these are the top 1% of the top 1%, the top 0.1% of people that are professional athletes. And I think in the end, and I forget the graphic, right? There's the graphic of your effort, and people like the road to success.
Yeah,
No,
right.
here's the road to success.
It bounces all
back, 2 steps back, 1 step forward, but it is a mentality, Bill, and I think that's what's so powerful about grit. What's so powerful about optimism, because it's a choice. Now, I'm not saying if you've been someone that's neutral or slightly pessimistic, that you can wake up one day and just be more optimistic. But if you read motivational quotes, if you do something silly like stare yourself in the mirror in the morning and say, I'm going to have a great day, it will take hold, because I do think your brain is a muscle, just like going to the gym. And you can train yourself mentally to be grittier, to be more optimistic, to have more belief in yourself and the others you're around. But you can't do it if you surround yourself with other pessimistic folks. You got to be around other gritty people, other optimists, because they will feed you. Yeah, I mean, it's not easy to be an optimist. It's just not. And as you were coaching people in a couple days ago on your Blue Sky, it can be a difficult time today, any day, to be optimistic. Especially if you watch too much news.
Yes.
So just watch enough news to stay informed, and then focus on staying positive. So I'm not some guy that's going to tell your listeners it's easy. What I am telling you, it's possible. I don't care whether you're neutral or a pessimist today. The fact that you're even listening to this right now would be an indicator that you know that there's room for growth. There's room for you to become more positive, to become more optimistic. And that's what I'd want your listeners to think about, is like, Bill, you're not special. Sorry to tell you that. I'm not special, right? I joke around. I'm 1 of 8. I'm 1 of 9. I'm 8 out of 9. You ask my mother, she'll like, that kid's not special. I got 8 others just like him. Like, there's nothing special about me, but there is in that grit and that resilience and that positive, optimistic attitude. And that can carry you so far in life. And even if you fall short of some goals you set, you don't always get there. The journey will be happier. The journey will be you'll learn lessons. You'll meet people that will enrich your life. I mean, to me, optimistically going through life is the only way to do it. Sorry, I'll get off my pedestal.
Sorry, that I couldn't have said it better myself. And it's a perfect way to wrap up this conversation. I'm glad that you're part of my life. I find you incredibly inspiring. To think about you sitting in Walter Reed, where you were then, and to see what you've done since is really inspiring. And I encourage people to check out the TD Foundation. If you're a buyer of things that Thundercat sells, give them a call. And Tom, thanks so much. I know how busy you are. Taking this time out to speak to us is a real privilege, and I thank you.
No, and given the incredible list of guests that you have, I'm honored that you even took the time to let me share my story. So I appreciate it, Bill.
Of course. Thanks, Tom.
It's clear from this part of our conversation that Tom Deierlein, the officer formerly known as Thundercat, is an inspiring leader. He's built a business with a higher purpose, to make America better and safer. And he describes himself as a goal-setting, pragmatic optimist. He says that setting goals and staying optimistic help get you beyond challenges in life that are inevitable. And I agree with Tom, with the humility of someone who's never faced nearly as tough a series of challenges as he has. I hope you enjoyed this Blue Sky conversation with Tom Deierlein. Before you go, please consider giving us a rating or review. We appreciate the feedback, and these also help us bring new listeners to our show. As always, my thanks go to the team at Sound On, Sound Off for their incredible help with editing and mixing this and all of our Blue Sky episodes. You can learn more about their work at soundonsoundoff.com. And all graphic design and cover art for Blue Sky and the Optimism Institute are provided by Crush Graphics. That's Crush with a K if you'd like to check out more of their fantastic work online. Until next time, I'm the founder of the Optimism Institute and host of Blue Sky, Bill Burke, and I thank you for listening.